Yeah, I'm Rob Callahan. I grew up around New Haven. I'm in a band called String Band.
Cool.
Going to Toads, probably since I was about 16, back in the late 70s. Or I've been going to Toads since, oh, it's rolling, just let it roll, right? I've been going to Toads since the late 70s. Well, obviously I was going with some older folks who drove. It was summertime, a hot summer night, and they said hop in the car, and I ended up down in New Haven in a line down the street outside this rock club, really worried that, I was kind of underage, but because I was tall, I was able to get in. And I think the first band I ever saw there was a band called Eyes, who had a big light show, and they're a big rock band. The place was packed, and it kind of blew my mind. I don't think I could probably say for the camera my most memorable experiences, but I could say that between the girlfriends, the wives, and now my son, who was just down there with me a few months ago, I've been with a lot of special friends and family down there since then, and I think special times, a lot of birthdays down there. I think it's longevity and the fact that it's always gone big. It's always brought out big name acts, so folks are drawn there. So the more folks are drawn there, you end up meeting friends there, and it happens year after year after year, and it becomes that because of its longevity and its high quality music.
So,
Hard to say, but you got to give a lot of kudos to Mike and Jimmy and Brian. It takes a lot to run a rock club, and the people who have worked there over the years have kept it going through tough times, and it's always been the vital place of the community where it's located, and it's just the right size to be a great place to go. First experience was back in the 90s when we had a thing called the street art revolution right around 1990. But then again, more recently in the last few years with the band String Band. And you get nervous when you're going up there for the first time. You've seen everybody from Dylan, the Stones, to Flock of Seagulls, the Go-Go's, Stray Cats. You've seen all these great bands play there. Now you're going to step up on this stage. And the sound is different. It's not like you're playing in a bar in front of the dartboards and the lights and so forth. It's a big sound, and it gets you. It's like the first sensation I got is felt I was playing guitar in a bouncy house. It was just such a big sound up there. It's changed. I'd say it's more stayed the same in a lot of ways. It's always been a rock club, but I think the changes that have gone through at Toads has really had to do with how it dealt with all the different age groups that were allowed in there at different times. I know at one point it was 18 years old, and then there was a few years where it had to be 19 and then 20 as the grandfather clause came through. That's when I was kind of going there at that point. Then the video generation came along. The video generation was probably 10 or more years there where there were video cameras and screens all over that bar, and that was a sort of epoch or era there. Then there was the era of the nets, if you probably, folks will talk about that, when underage people can be on one side and over 21 on another. So I think the changes that have gone on there, I think from my perspective, have really been about how they dealt with the different age groups getting in there to see great music. Concerts at Toads, wow, so many amazing ones, and I'm sure other people you talk to are going to say that too. It's hard to really narrow them down, but some of the funnest shows that I've seen was kind of back in that new wave era, and probably because I was 19, 20 years old at the time, and seeing the Flock of Seagulls there, and the Go-Go's, and Stray Cats, and the Motels and Joe Jackson, and then seeing the classic rock things come through there like Steppenwolf. And I didn't get a chance to see Dylan or the Stones. I was kind of shut out from those, but I hung outside. Dark Star Orchestra's playing there, and that's great, but not quite as amazing as seeing Shakedown there every month. Railroad Earth, another great band that's played there. Roger McGuinn was a very special show for me because I got to go downstairs and hang out with him a little bit downstairs. And if you know Roger McGuinn from the Byrds, that was a pretty big scenario for me. But I'd say those are kind of the bunches of the great shows I saw there. Strangest nights, gosh, I'd probably have to plead the fifth on that one too. There's been a lot of strange nights at Toad's Place, but probably being involved with being thrown out a few times when I was a little crazier was probably up there amongst the strange. I can't say I've been all over the country and seen them all, but I talk to people in the industry and the name keeps coming up. So really, what makes it stand out? The name. Toad's Place. It is. It's one of the big rock clubs on the East Coast. Shakedown, the fact that it's all ages at Toad's Place, all ages at Toad's Place, and it's the music of the Grateful Dead, and there's nothing more that can be said other than that. And those guys are great musicians, and they've been at it 20 years. So the fact that they've been at it that long, there's young and old. I saw Shakedown in 1988. There's folks seeing Shakedown for the first time this year. The family keeps coming. Sometimes we fade out, but we don't fade away. We keep coming back at different times, and sometimes we don't see them for a few years, but they've been a constant. So when you want good old Grateful Dead and you look in the newspaper, Shakedown's playing, you know what you're going to get. And if it's at Toad's, you know it's going to be big. The sound system's going to be awesome. The lights are going to be great. It's totally pro there, and the people come because it feels good there. And it's all ages, and it's great where young and old Deadheads can all dance together and keep that vibe going. Well, the scene that goes to Shakedown is a scene we've always known from going to see many Grateful Dead shows through the years. Seeing the Grateful Dead since the 70s, and the scene is as much as the music is. It's always been that way. The scene has been as much as the music. As beautiful and as amazing the music's always been, it's always been about the scene. And I think when people come to see Shakedown and they go to see Further, the other ones in the Grateful Dead, they're contributing to that scene. So they know it's part of their job to amplify and be up there as high as the music one way or another, and make it a good scene.
Shining light.
Well, I'm glad you say that, because every once in a while something happens at the rock club and it gets in the newspaper. But overall, if it wasn't for Toad's, I think that whole area of Broadway and York Street wouldn't be what it is without Toad's Place. So the town, the city, the town fathers, everybody has Toad's, and Mike, Lord mercy on him, and Brian and Jimmy and the whole crew there. There's a lot of benefit that's come to the city. And like I said, I don't think that whole neighborhood would have grown the way it is. And to tell you the truth, I don't think Crown Street would have grown, that whole scene down there, if it wasn't for Toad's Place as well. Gosh, you know, being an older guy playing in a band there, it's great fun. Toad, you're playing in front of 500 people. Anyone who's in a band knows the difference between playing between 20 or 40 people in a bar and 500 people that's listening and grooving. If you're a musician, there's nothing like that energy, and it's why we keep doing it. I think we all, as far as a local music scene coming out of Toad's, a lot of the bands, and that's starting to develop more over the last few years, I'd say, at Toad's, because the way Dave Frankel is really cultivating those bands as openers, it's really creating a broader community that we all kind of know each other, and we all take turns opening for Shakedown. And what's good coming out of it, now there's going to be a festival that's coming about in Connecticut that's going to take all those bands and really help the jam band world anyway shine in Connecticut and hopefully throughout New England.